Gridlock Carbon. It's a time now.
Five of them.
Right, all right.
Almost 5 minutes to 5.
Yeah, we reset the agenda a little bit. So we've invited the trade unions comrades to come, and they've been part of our dialogue, as I said at the beginning. We don't want to leave trade unions behind in this roadmap to October. Okay, we have trade union allies, and so we just felt we'll just have an open discussion here today in the light of COVID. I'm not sure if much is going to happen on 1st of May, given the COVID dynamic. But just to open it up to hear from comrades, how should we engage labor as we go to Parliament, basically? And maybe Janet, this comes back to what you were saying about NUMSA, having reach and a pathway into NUMSA. But also, doing this in a way that's not old-style left entryist politics, but to have open, mature engagements. And that's what we did with the round table. We invited organizations formally to come and sit and talk. Tell us what your plans are on the just transition. Tell us what your resolutions are saying on climate crisis, things like that. So, comrades, it's open, really. There's no clear-cut answers to this theme. And I think we'll go till about 5:30, right, Jane? Yeah. So we want to hear from you. So there's May Day on the horizon. COVID complicates it. We're going to Parliament. In the build-up to Parliament in that week, we want to engage local social justice organizations, including Labour in Cape Town and so on, and bring them in as well. But what are your thoughts? How do we keep Labour on side?
What is the concept of the Gridlock Cape Town?
Well, that's tomorrow. But Gridlock Carbon was really an idea that came out of the engagements with Sasol last year. And the one big idea for May Day was that in this session, we actually plan how to gridlock Sandton. Sandton has a lot of headquarters of various institutions that are implicated in carbon capitalism. Sasol being one of them, but there's all kind of finance houses. There's even the American embassy, and so on in Sandton. So the initial thought was that we have flash mobs, we have sit-ins, we have banner drop-downs, we project messages onto buildings using digital technology. There were all kinds of ideas and we chain ourselves. But that was the ambitious plan last year, and we're not sure about that. I think we really at the drawing board on this one. So, comrades, the question is, how do we keep the engagements with Labour going? There's good. COVID is a priority. SAFTU has issued a statement. I'm waiting. I don't know if somebody's seen a COSATU statement on this. I don't know if anybody's seen a FEDUSA statement on this. Yeah. So I don't know. I think this is going to overwhelm unions. This is going to be a preoccupation. So how do we find intersections? How do we find convergences, common ground? And maybe plan in two phases. The COVID phase of things, which is probably the next 2 to 3 months. Is there room for anything to do with Labour? Maybe that's the question. And then after 3 months, so probably end of June, what should we be doing with Labour? So we don't lose ground there. By then we'll have the charter in draft. We'll have all the tools, communication tools, translated into as many languages as possible, things like that. What should we do? Yeah.
Going back to the statement that you made this morning, that it seems like our labor is weakened. That's why probably Nedlec is at its lowest point, because now hearing, after the interview, they did the speech from Osman Khashoggi. They went to Benin Jalinjar. Benin Jalinjar was scathing of the approach that the president took. And basically, he was saying it has run a shortfall in the sense that, but on some other sense, it made sense in the sense that he was saying, but there's no specifics. This is general approach to a crisis. Now, when you look at COSATU to SAF to Enfidusa, and it's like now, when you sit with one, you become the enemy of the other. You see. So now, the things that I also like the point that we've engaged all of them, and we have not done a preconceived idea. We've said, how do we distill, how do we co-create a solution to this problem? So when we sit with them, it's exactly that. We're not going to say, these are carbon kingdoms. We're saying we have a problem with this organization, and this is our problem with it. But these are alternatives. So you, as the workers, how do you envisage the solution which does not include that process? Because, I mean, when you talk about renewable technologies, all of them are soft because they are in charge of ESCOM. They will say, but jobs. COSATU will say, because they are in charge of the mining organization, they will say jobs.
Yeah.
But you're saying, think out of the box.
Yeah.
See, create something new. What about the group which is not employed? What about the other people who are not employed, which could be your potential members in future? Okay.
Mm.
The million jobs that we could create from alternatives.
Yeah. Any other comrades have thoughts on the roadmap and ideas we can go for it?
Just thinking about what Itumeleng just said, I mean, where is the 1 million climate jobs campaign sitting? I mean, it was I read that it was really good. Like, it was very ambitious, and like the way the language they used was really amazing. But obviously, the campaign has fallen apart. I don't know, maybe because I think that is the biggest thing. So first of all, the 1st of May is a public holiday, so we have to. Anything we do has to be in a public space, but not necessarily related to business, because business won't be happening anyway. So if we do decide to do something, maybe rather at a mall or something like that, because that's where, what are people doing on their public holiday? Shopping, going to the movies, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe COVID will deter people from doing that, but there is a possibility. Yeah, I think people will still go to the movies and that kind of thing. So I think our action has to be in a very public and more cultural space.
Mm.
But also, maybe it is an opportunity to bring 1 million climate jobs back into the conversation, and then that's how you hook the unions. You say, here are the jobs. If we can get behind a campaign like this, you can be doing 2 things at once. You could be creating jobs and fighting the climate crisis. I don't know where that campaign is though.
I agree with Courtney, because our whole kind of proposition to Labour was, a just transition. And I think you're right, something like the Million Climate Jobs program was something that exists, was there, was local, and speaks to our current crisis of unemployment, and the possibility of strengthening labour in the future through this process of taking the climate issue as something serious. I think that is a real prospect.
Okay. Comrades, it's very flat, so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to kind of maybe reflect on and pull out things that we've been building consensus on around practice. Because that's the crucial thing for me. I think that's what's going to take, because you see, we can't just generate a shopping list of things to do. We all are very constrained, and we all do too many things. It'll be a waste of time if we're going to go in that direction. So, I think so far the consensus is that COVID is important. We are linking COVID injustice with climate injustice. And so, what we put out coming out of this activist school, it's got to speak to the concerns of labor. So I'm putting that out as one of the concrete things coming out here, and we really stand with labor in this moment. The whole question of paid leave, the whole question of care for workers, children when they are working, etc. I mean, all these things are going to come to the fore. Food crises, because workers' children depend on the meals they get in schools, things like that. So I think we've got to come out with a COVID statement that leans strongly around the interests and concerns of Labour. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, but let me finish. April 19th has been crystallized now on a date of solidarity around water issues. We've got drought-affected and water-stressed communities that are going to lead all of us, okay, particularly in the Eastern Cape. I think, again, our messaging and our approach, comrades, is that we must call Labour to participate. We must appeal to Labour to participate. So we actually we also mentioned that in our messaging around COVID, that this is a lead action that we are taking as Climate Justice Charter forces to spotlight how water-stressed communities are also the most vulnerable in the context of COVID. And we're inviting Labour to journey with us.
Can I ask a question? Can you interrupt?
Yeah.
Just with the water, the areas that we spoke about areas, but have we actually identified some areas that we said we would focus on certain areas, but invite others to join?
Yes.
Have we identified those areas that we will focus on?
So, Chris, Sid, what I'm doing is just crystallizing out where we have some consensus on action that we've been deliberating on throughout the day. And I'm also saying is that all these actions must be skewed towards pulling in Labour and others, whoever's there. The other thing that came up in our deliberation beyond April 19th as a coordinated day of solidarity led from below was the potential for student action. Okay, and of course this will be determined by the context, conditions at each university, but there is momentum at universities to do something around divest, zero hunger, zero waste, and some of the demands that we're pioneering and championing at WITS and Free State and other places. Again, I think the inflection should be that students should also invite Labour onto their platforms. Okay, so if there's an assembly at WITS, if there's eventually something, the workers at all our universities, plus outside our campuses, should be brought in. Okay, so we use the assembly processes at universities to build and deepen that relationship, particularly with Labour. So Labour doesn't feel it's alone. Over the weekend, some of us were in a meeting, and the General Secretary of Solidarity told all of us, well, you all must also take on board our struggles, and we will take on board your struggles. Okay, he put it very clearly. He was explicit about this. So I think we should invite Labour to come and speak on student-led platforms about their struggles, about their issues, and at the same time build a relationship for what we want around climate, which is also in the interest of workers. I think the other issue is May Day itself. Now there's a whole lot of uncertainty about May Day. Okay? But I think there are a couple of ideas that we can think about. So for example, there's a proposal around using worker money, pension money, to partially bail out Eskom. All right? I think there's room for a debate about that issue. Okay? We've been talking about it a little bit in COPAC. Should we respond to that publicly as part of the Climate Justice Charter platform and host maybe a debate or something? I mean, hosting a debate may not be a good idea because of the situation. Or maybe putting out a short document engaging with that issue. Okay, so you surface, so you deepen the debate for workers. Another idea we were thinking about around May Day was the energy transition in other parts of the world. It is happening, albeit haphazardly. It's happening in Spain, where the government has put into place transitional measures to get coal mining communities and unions beyond coal. It's happening in Germany to some extent. I mean, all of these processes are fraught. They have problems. They have limits. It's happening in parts of the US, by the way, at a subnational level in some places. So what we were thinking about was maybe putting a short 5-6 pager looking at some of these comparative experiences. What lessons can we learn from these contexts for the transition beyond coal? And putting that out for May Day as well. Okay, so that's another idea. We're throwing it up here for your input as well. I think, and this we could do in simple language, we can do it in different languages. so that again we're reaching workers who understand that workers in other parts of the world who've been in a similar predicament have solutions, there are pathways, and so on. The other idea is the children's action, and but I think, to be realistic, children's action won't happen now because of COVID stuff. And I mean, there's all sort of great ideas that came out from the previous discussion. But again, we got to think about when we do something, whatever that's going to be, around advancing children in the climate debate in South Africa and so on, we also invite labor. I think it's very, very important so that we keep them close. Then there's the endorsements phase of the final charter that we'll put out after May. The question is, how do we get this to labor? And this is again legwork. This is outreach work we all have to commit to doing. Okay, and I'm putting it out here. So whether it's labor in our unions, in our universities, whether it's workers in our schools, whether it's trade unions generally out there, we will send the final document to all of them. We will ask for face-to-face meetings, and we will use the pool of activists in the Climate Justice Charter process to go and speak to labor, to present the final charter, etc. So we'll do it formally, up front, no sneaking and bringing it in. We say, here's it, comes out of this process, we're proud of what we've done, but here's it, and labor's been part of this, what do you do? And table it in the National Executive Committee meetings, or ask for it to be tabled. We'll prepare resources for a roadshow. So all the communication tools we've mentioned, we even have already PowerPoint slides, but we'll adapt that to the final charter, etc., etc. So we can take the endorsement process formally to labor, and I'm proposing that we do that. And then, of course, finally, Cape Town itself. We invite labor into the local convening committee. We'll talk more about this tomorrow, but I'm just surfacing it now. So local unions in Cape Town, and if Chisimani leads the convening process, they should be included in that process.
Chisimani should lead. They've
Yes.
already got very good.
Yeah, but I don't want to volunteer them. Tomorrow,
I'll volunteer.
let's hear from Zelda. And if she's happy, we go for it. I mean, I think it'll be amazing if they do that. And we also asked labor to participate in the programming for that week of action. We want to dedicate a day to social and climate justice organizations in that week. And so, comrades raise their issues, we give solidarity, and things like that. So we also involve labor at that level. And then, of course, the march itself. We involve labor in the march, and we try in our invitees list and the limited resources we have, Jane, to prioritize flying labor leaders down to Cape Town. So they are part of the march, leading together with people like that. How's that? So I don't know, comrades, I just started talking here. So I'm just saying, roadmap up until October, Cape Town Parliament. How do we find connections with labor? We cannot leave labor behind. Any thoughts on this? Things to enrich?
I can comment, although I'm really here to learn more than I am to say anything. I only got here a few days ago, but I've had many intense discussions with some people who I think have their fingers on the pulse, and the few ideas that might be helpful. I want to begin with the point of departure that Courtney said about what happened to the climate jobs. Because if I was here in 2011, there was this massive, outpouring around this idea. My sense is that there was this window of opportunity from 2012 to 2015 for this kind of eco-socialist mass labor politics, and it was shut down by the top union leadership, out-organized, on a sort of micro-political level. I don't know, that's just what I've heard. You all know the details. So how do we get back to where we were? The masses are still feeling ever more the same contradictions we've all been dealing with, so it's not like it's over. So the ideas I would submit to, drawing from the discussions over the last few days and some things I've read, would be to take this kind of politics back to the base without dealing with this top union. Don't try to go through them. We know where they stand, the top union leadership. So one thing pulling off of what the guy from Solidarity was saying at WITS is I think maybe everybody needs to go through a media training on what do. We have to have talking points at the tip of our tongues when people say, well, you're taking away jobs from the coal miners. Everybody needs to be ready for the argument, ready to be able to explain how catastrophic climate change is the best opportunity for full employment. and to just be really ready to don't let that argument continue. That argument is going to send humanity into extinction. Because the sort of eco-socialist politics, the only answer is for freely associated labor to defend nature as it defends itself. And you don't have to get too theoretical about it, you just talk about how this is the opportunity for a full employment society. Maybe it would also help, because you don't want to just send people like links to the Trade Unions for Energy Democracy website. That doesn't work. You need to have maybe like somebody who knows Zapiro or something like that to make some graphics around this, to make it crystal clear and make some really nice, simple pamphlets that we can send everywhere on this subject. And again, I just think that, I know things look rough here, but again, I think South Africa has a better chance of this kind of a transformation than so many other countries in the world. I'm not trying to romanticize how hard it is, but there's a bigger potential payoff here. The other thing I would just say is, I was reading this article by Trevor Ngwane on the sphere of Marikana, and he talks about the necessity of uniting struggles at home and in the workplace. And the men usually, especially the mine workers, they're struggling over exchange values, over wages. But the women and the children at home, they're looking at water quality, they're looking at the kind of issues that we're talking about here a little more. If there's a way of reaching the union members through their wives and children, specifically through the children, if these children could be, I know everybody goes to different schools, but if there's a way of uniting with the kids of these NUMSA workers, for instance, then they can put the pressure on their parents, and then the parents can overthrow their current leadership, or not, depending on, that's the details there. But sort of like the Maoists talk about surrounding cities, like you need to surround the unions from within through their family relationships. Maybe. And I realize I'm sort of out of the loop here, and maybe I'm romantic or don't know enough about it, but those are my comments.
I mean, I think we just got to be a bit nuanced about the South African context. I don't think all the union leadership collectives in South Africa are all bureaucratized business union leaders. I think it's complicated, and given the fragmentation, I know this is Ngwane's thesis, it's all bureaucratic elites, and so I don't agree with that fundamentally. Yeah. I think we've got to be very careful. I mean, I've been teaching a Global Labor University program at Wits University for over 10 years to labor leaders. And I've been busy late into the night with others trying to get trade unionists out of South Africa with the COVID thing and so on. We've got to crash that program. But leaving that aside, I mean, the point is this: is that in that teaching program, we've discussed climate jobs, we've discussed food sovereignty, we've discussed a just transition, which comes from trade unions, etc., etc. And part of that was, in the end, an impact on the NUMSA process. Part of that has been the work some of us did with FEDUSA, the federation. And part of that has been also affirming the work that COSATU has been doing around climate just transition, etc., etc. So yes, I mean, I think that labor in South Africa is weak, it's fragmented, there's spaces at different levels to intervene. But I think the way we got to walk with the Climate Justice Charter process as much as possible, we got to be open with the trade unions, very open. And the dialogue we had with labor, and we created a safe space, and they were honest about their failings. They're not taking forward their own resolutions. They're not doing A, B, C, D. They're not, so yeah, I just think we got to be sensitive about our footwork, and we don't want to stumble and reach a point where the unions are saying, oh, well, you guys in this Climate Justice Charter process are trying to hijack our members. I'll make one final point. The economic freedom fighters in South Africa has been calling wildcat strikes. Okay, they've been putting a lot of workers' jobs on the line, and they've been turning those workers against their unions. And in some places, workers were fired. And late last year, the SAFTU leadership took stock of this, and they issued a very strong statement about these intrusions that are going on to undermine labor in the country. So I think the ground is a bit messy, and we got to be very careful. So how we position this process, that's why I went through this list of things where we can do creative, transformative stuff. So you can invite a local Nihawu local or a administrators union local at WITS. You can be creative about all of these things. Sorry, Sid, you had your...
No, that's fine. No, I just wanted to say that, I mean, with regard to the trade unions, Zelda is already through Chisimani. We've
Yeah.
had a really good consultation around the PIC issue. So
Yeah.
she has a very good relationship
Yeah.
with the trade union.
Excellent. Yeah, and so we can build on that.
And locally.
Yeah. Yeah, we can build on that. Okay, comrades. Yeah.
I've got one little idea,
Yeah.
which is that May Day in some countries is associated with workers having a holiday which they claim for themselves.
Yeah.
And going outside and having a picnic and having fun and
Yeah.
enjoying the good weather and so on.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite a nice idea in the context of this COVID thing as well to try and reclaim that tradition
Yeah.
because it means being with nature,
Yeah.
being outside, not being stuck in a room or a hall listening to long
Yeah,
speeches
yeah,
and
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, just stay with it.
It's a nice idea.
I had a contradiction for Janet that some people's closeness with nature is going to the mall. So so could this idea of building carbon going to the malls might be a good idea of that type of approach.
Then you're going to gridlock the mall and
Yeah,
shut it
good.
down.
Good luck them all. Okay, great, comrades. So I think the emphasis in our discussion will be that we will constantly keep the door open to Labour. We will constantly reach out at every moment of the roadmap to October 16th. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, comrades. I'm going to wrap this up. Quincy, should we transition into your talk? Yeah.
Should we take a
Break?
1 minute
Yes,
break?
Yeah,
a
let's
break.
take a break and
5-minute
then we
break,
come
or-
back at 50:30. How's
Okay.
that? Yeah, great stuff. Okay.
To copy some stuff. So,